if we're both trying not to cry, then we don't hug or touch. That's the way this works.
Oh, I'm a sympathetic crier.
I
If you
am.
cry, I'll cry.
Gosh, I don't want to cry.
Hello, and welcome to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. This is where we share stories for inspiration, entertainment, and encouragement, because we all know emergency nurses have the best stories. Now here's your host, Kevin McFarland.
My next guest was one of the funnest interviews I've had the opportunity to do on this podcast. She is a blast to be around. One of the first people I look for whenever I go to a national conference. I spent more time on this track editing out the laughing, both hers and mine, than I did anything else when I was doing the editing. You guys are really going to enjoy this episode with my guest, the one and only Elaine Thomas. Okay, my friend, here we go. Start off by just telling the audience a little bit about you and tell us a little bit about your background.
I'm Elaine Thomas. I live in Abilene, Texas, and I have been an emergency room nurse for 6 years. I started out at my first year after nursing school in the operating room, which I absolutely hated because my patients weren't awake and they didn't remember me, and I was sweet and kind, and I wanted to make sure they were wonderful, and they absolutely never knew that I was their nurse. Ever. I mean, Versed and whatever cocktail they give before they reel them back, they absolutely never remembered me. I would see them later like, hey, how you doing? And they're like, go away, creepy lady. And then maybe a family member would redeem me like, oh, that was your nurse before you had surgery.
I can't think of a worse fit for nursing for you than OR. That just seems like a terrible fit.
It was bad. It was a year of being a gopher, getting yelled at, getting things thrown at me, and feeling no sense of purpose. Like, I seriously scrub, position, and chart. And I was just like, this is not what I went to nursing school for. Yeah. But I didn't have my bachelor's yet, and so it was the first job that I was offered. And during nursing school, I worked at a children's standalone hospital in their emergency department. For 2 years, I went to school Monday through Thursday, and I worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday as admissions clerk in the ER. Oh, wow. And I knew that I loved it. I knew I wanted to be there. Sometimes when I wasn't too crazy, like the nurses would pull me back and say, hey, will you help hold this baby while I do this? So, and I was like, absolutely. Because they knew I was in nursing school. Yeah. But they wouldn't let me work there because I didn't have a bachelor's, and they wanted me to have some experience. So I did my time in the OR for a year, and that whole year I'm working on my bachelor's, and I'm thinking, okay, 3 more months, 6 more weeks, I was counting down the days. I already had my boss. Yes. And so I just talked to my boss that I had at the children's hospital, and I was like, hey, I'll have my bachelor's in December, and I have been working a year in the OR. Whenever you've got a spot for me, I want to work there. And so, almost like week of graduation / been a year, a nurse a year and stuff, it all just kind of fell into place very quickly. Yeah. And so I was children's emergency only for 3 years, and then everything else has been a mixed bag at trauma centers and emergency departments with adults and kids, because I wanted to do nurse practitioner. So I wanted to do nurse practitioner, and I knew that I didn't want to be as specific to do just pediatrics, even though they are my absolute number one favorite patient. But I knew that if I wanted to be well-rounded as a good nurse and a good nurse practitioner, I needed some adult experience. Yeah. And the adult world is what flips my whole life upside down.
How so?
I'm telling you, adult ER is like the world of craziness. Kids are cool and they get really sick, but they get a lot better, and their traumas are super traumatic. It's a bipolar environment in children's ER. You have really great or you have really terrible, yep. And there's really not a lot in between. Most of the time it's not bad, and then sometimes it's just the worst. I get no sense of that in adult world. I feel like every patient you go into, you have no idea what you're going to get. You have no idea they're going to be good, or they're going to be bad. Are they going to lie? Are they going to tell the truth? I expect to go into a room where they said, this patient, you've got a patient with chest pain. I expect them to, kind of give me a rundown. I don't ever expect them to say, well, we were outside and I, picked up the back end of my donkey and it kicked me in the chest. And I was like, oh, well, that explains your chest pain.
You're like, oh, of course it did.
You just you never know what you're going to get, and you don't ever know if it's the truth. And I felt like emergency nursing in adult world has like flipped me on my head and taught me a million things more. Like I said, pediatrics is my absolute love, but because they're the coolest patients ever, you can make them smile. I blow bubbles. I sing songs. You do that with an adult, they look at you kind of funny.
Probably, yeah.
They're like, why are you bringing bubbles in here? I'm 85. Oh, you're right. Sorry. Wrong patient. I know. Yeah, I know. So I used to do the Scrub-a-Dub song, like, as I was starting my IV. So here I am, only been in the OR, and then I do training in pediatrics. So most of the things that I got in routine of for like starting IVs and like prepping my sterile fields, and anyways, all of that I did initially as a pediatric nurse. And so here I go to the adult world and singing the Scrub-a-Dub song for 30 seconds while I'm, preparing for a blood culture. I mean, the laughter that I got constantly, like, dabba 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 dabba, and I'm singing this song out loud while I'm scrubbing their arm like for 30 seconds. And the reaction has always been either pure laughter or, ma'am, are you okay?
That's hilarious.
It's one of those habits I got into for 3 years for, preparing for an IV insertion or something. And I know it's 30 seconds. I know it gets me in a good mood to get that IV. And so maybe I don't do it as much now as I used to, but I definitely have it going on in my head if it's not coming out loud,
That's funny. Oh my God, that's so funny.
Be careful how you train yourself. It's like muscle memory. That's what your go-to is, Yeah. Instead of staying alive, we'd be like singing different songs during CPR. And nobody else gets that but ER nurses, like, guys, y'all are sick. There's something wrong with you that you're laughing and singing while doing CPR. I was like, somebody's got to break the tension in the room,
Right.
So I know.
I started, I don't know if you know this, but I started as a peds nurse too. I started in the peds ER. That's where I started. And, some of the little things you pick up that you're like, you go into a 35-year-old man who's got abdominal pain. You're like, come on, sir, let me see your tummy. And he's like, okay, sure.
Can you your shirt? Let me see your belly.
It's like, so tell me about your poop. And they're like, okay. So yeah, some of those things carry over, and they're not necessarily appropriate for adults. So.
Yeah, and it flies out like you don't even. It's like second nature. You're like, oh, yeah. So
35.
Yeah, I was always medical before I went to nursing school. I did anything that would let me do medical since the time I was 18. I started out in phlebotomy, and then I did like medical assistant, and I was a podiatry, foot surgeon's assistant where we did surgery half the day, and then clinic, and then I did OB-GYN, which was my love. Oh my gosh. So I did OB-GYN clinic as an MA, and I did vital signs, and I got to help like do all this women's stuff. And the day I knew I needed to go to nursing school was I wheeled a mama in labor over to labor and delivery, and I was going to put her in the room and get her hooked up and stuff and help out the nurse. And I was told by the nurses very politely, they were not mean, they just said, okay, well, we've got this, RNs only from this point on. And I guess I had crossed some boundaries, and now I know, like, scope of practice and things that I was doing. I mean, I got this. I know what I'm doing. But I was like, pissed off. I was like, RNs only? What are you talking about?
What does that mean?
I took that wheelchair. Yeah, I turned that wheelchair around, and I went back to the clinic, and I was like, those nurses scooted me out of that room, and they said RNs only. And the doctor's like, yeah, so? And I was like, oh, this is a thing. This is a thing. I'm going to school. Nobody tells me RNs only,
Good for you.
And so I started my trek in nursing school. It took me 7 years to get my RN.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super fun. One class at a time, night school, in between having babies and getting things done. I was like 7 years to get my RN. And I've never stopped school since. How about that? Nice.
Good for you. Good for you. What was that? What was that? Now, did you start as an ADN or a BSN?
ADN, yeah.
ADN, yeah, me too.
So, yeah. Yep, I did. I never did AOEN. I just went from medical assistant to RN, and then bachelor's and now master's. So we'll see.
I was on that 10-year plan too, so I hear you.
I squeezed it all in. 7 years. I mean, I just pushed that 3-year program right into it.
And then each one after that, I was on the long-term plan for my bachelor's and my master's as well. So at least I'm
really
consistent.
Wanted that bachelor's. Yeah, I really wanted that bachelor's so I could go work in the children's ER. So I doubled up classes and I did what I could to quickly get that one. Wow. But now I'm doing one class at a time again. So one class at a time. That's what it takes. I don't even care.
When I was doing my BSN, I started taking multiple classes, and my grades were suffering for it. And I remember the program chair of my BSN program, who was just a lovely person, called me and she called me. She's like, "So Kevin, you're like doubling up your classes, but you're not doing as well. You're falling behind. What's going on?" And I was like, "Well, I'm just trying to get done." She's like, "Okay, I got a couple questions for you." I said, "Sure." She goes, at the time I was working at the Department of Health at the state, and she goes, "Are you going to get a raise when you get your bachelor's?" And I was like, No. She's like, Are you going to get a new job? I was like, No, I'm good. I like my job. And she's like, okay. She goes, you don't hate your job or anything? You're not like, you don't need, you're not trying to get a job so you can make money to feed your family or anything? I said, no. She's like, then why are you killing yourself trying to get your bachelor's done in a year?
Good point. That's a good point.
She's like, what are you doing? What's the point? What's the point in killing yourself if the reality is it's not going to change anything except for you're going to accomplish your bachelor's degree? And I was like, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I felt the same way doing my
and that's kind of where I'm at right now. Yeah, I definitely feel that way right now. I'm like, I'm going to get there. It's going to take me maybe a little longer than other folks, but it's not a race against anything but me. And in the meantime, I'm still a nurse doing what I love to do, and I'm gaining experience every day going to work. And that nurse practitioner will always be there, and I'm still in classes, still working towards it. But there is no reason to kill myself right now. Not at this point. My goodness.
Absolutely, I'm a firm believer in that. At the time, I was.
Yeah, and honestly, now that I've looked at the pay grades and the scales of nurse practitioners versus what I make with nights, weekends, and overtime, I'm like, not sure I'm going to make that much more. So I'm not in that much more hurry to get it. I'm like, yes, maybe I'll have a little bit better schedule. Maybe not. But at least, but the incentive for me is the goal. Like, that's always been my goal. It's not because I want a totally different job, because I'll probably stay in the ER. I don't know. I don't see myself going much further than that. I don't know. But the other side of that is I don't think I'm going to make that much more money. So just like she said to you, I feel that inside, one day at a time, one class at a time. Let's work at it and not kill myself, kill my family, kill my coworkers with all my stress level. Let's just do this thing and actually try to enjoy the process,
Because let's face it, we're not the only ones in this. I mean, we get our ass kicked while we're going to school, but our families pay the price too.
Oh, for sure. 100%.
Like I realize that, there's many I was telling somebody the story about, we were in Vegas. We were in Vegas for my wife's birthday, and everybody's in Vegas having a good time. And you know where I was? I was sitting in the Starbucks writing a paper, and I was like, what's wrong with my life?
It's called multitasking, but not really well. It's like, yes, I'm celebrating your birthday, but I'm not really going to be here. I'm going to check out for a little bit.
But I got some stuff to do. Yeah. So
yeah,
it's one thing to kind of remember. So good for you. Good for you.
Yeah.
All right. At what point in your nursing career were you like, at one point after you got your nursing, were you like, this is what I'm meant to do. This is where I'm supposed to be, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing?
Well, I was a bank teller prior to anything medical. So I worked for a credit union associated with the hospital for 2 years. And that 2 years was probably some of the most tearful, bad days of my life. But I was going to stick it out because I'm committed to this thing because I got a good job and I don't have I'm a high school student and I've got a baby on the way because I got pregnant really early in life. And so I was on probation in trouble every day for 2 years at that bank. I'm dyslexic, and we probably shouldn't put a dyslexic kid who hasn't gone through a lot of training in a bank. Now, I know, right? Let's just set me up for failure. But I didn't know it. My mom never had me tested, and I've always made good grades. I was hyper in school, but I mean, most kids are. So nobody really I didn't cause enough trouble to be a squeaky wheel. So they just didn't test me. So here I am 2 years in a job where I sucked at it, and I wasn't happy, except for I liked the people. And so because I was good with the people and they thought I had good relationships with the customers and stuff, I probably could sell ice cubes to Eskimos because I'm a people person. I like people. Yeah. And so they kept me on for 2 years, and every quarter I had to go back up for the probation or whatever board and say, how many times has she messed up this month, and how many times can we let her off the hook, or does we have to write her up? And I went through this process every 3 to 4 months. Wow. So that is a job I had prior. And then one of the people at this bank said, hey, I've got a phlebotomy job. You don't have, it's entry level. You can just come work there. If you're going to lose I was kind of upset because I'm pretty sure I was going to lose my job that week. And she's like, don't cry. Don't be upset. You're 18 years old. You got a whole life ahead of you. Let's come and see if you got a good personality. I'll teach you how to do phlebotomy. But the minute I got in that lab, and the minute I started poking people with needles, and the minute I got around patients and I could see kind of this medical process, it was like something clicked. It was like a light bulb. And that's awesome. I was like, this is what I'm meant to do. I'm not meant to spend
Hello, and welcome to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. This is where we share stories for inspiration, entertainment, and encouragement, because we all know emergency nurses have the best stories. Now here's your host, Kevin McFarland.
That big. But I'm just saying, when you realize you've been in the wrong environment and then you get in the right environment, the whole demeanor changes. Your whole life changes almost. It's like,
isn't it awesome?
A breath of fresh air. It was. And it was the same way, like I was telling you earlier about the OR to the ER. Like, I went through nursing school. I knew I wanted to be a nurse because of that OB experience and stuff. But then I get in the OR and I hate it. And I'm like, man, I did not go through all this 7 years of schooling to hate my life and to be in the OR. And this is not what I thought I was getting into. I thought I was going to see cool surgeries and get to know my patients and have great outcomes. And it wasn't that way for me. And I get to the ER and I turn people around in a couple hours and they get to go home happy. I poke people with needles and blood comes out and it makes me really happy. I accomplished something and it was great. And the ER for me has such a sense of instant gratification in one way or another. They come, they leave, they either get admitted and we get them better, or they go home and they get better. Sometimes the traumas are super cool and I have to intervene and do something that saves somebody's life. And I'm like, how cool is my life that I actually get to be the reason or part of the reason somebody lives or dies. It's just the coolest feeling in the world to be a part of something bigger than myself. And honestly, most of the trauma people, they don't even know me. It's not about me necessarily, but inside me, there's a super sense of gratification and purpose. Like, I have the knowledge and the skills and the ability. And today it worked all in place to make sure that guy goes home and sees his family. It's cool.
That's super cool. Yeah. It's nice when you finally feel like you found your tribe, like you found your people.
Yeah. Those are my people. And my sense of humor and the way I do life was nothing like the OR people. Like those OR people looked at me like I was half crazy, and that's okay because that the super serious environment sometimes gets really intense, and I'm not that serious about almost anything. I mean, unless I have to be. And then you get in the ER and we're making fun of things to each other, not to everybody, you know, professional in front of patients, but we're not taking anything super serious because otherwise you couldn't handle it. Like it would be so serious all the time. You would probably melt down and like be a puddle. Yeah. So you take things with a grain of salt. You make jokes. You keep moving because you've got a fast pace. You don't have a chance to slow down. And I just found like, okay, this is what I was probably meant to do my whole life. Like this is what I tried to be in high school with my friends, and they just didn't get it.
Yeah. No, it's amazing when you finally feel like you've found your stride. There's nothing more gratifying. There's nothing more gratifying than that.
That's true.
Like, I've never ever regretted becoming a nurse. So
I've had some rough days, but I've never said, man, I wish I'd never done this, never.
You bet. I mean, and part of what I want to do this podcast for is for those people. I want someone to be having a rough day and be like, I want to go listen to Elaine's story. And that's going to make me feel better about what I'm doing. That's my goal.
For sure.
That's my goal.
I may re-listen to my story too, so I can remember.
That's right. Yeah, you'd be like, yeah, what was I talking about?
What did I say that one time? It was encouraging to myself.
That's right.
No, yeah,
That's
for
right.
sure. Because if you don't recall some of the reasons why you go in and do what you do, the bad days are bad. I mean, nobody would even question. You tell them a little bit of it, and they're like, oh yeah, that's terrible. Yeah. Those bad days can get overwhelming, and if you don't recall why you do what you do and remember the passion where it comes from, it's got to come from somewhere. And if you don't remember those things, your flame will go real hot, and then it will be gone.
It will be gone. You're absolutely right. Tell me about a patient who changed the way you practice.
Oh my gosh. I'll tell you, there was a lady who came in through triage. I was not in triage. I had a set of rooms, and they brought her to me, and she was 24 years old with a headache, supposedly, right? Headache. Uh-huh. And she is cursing everyone out, like up, down, sideways, left and right, pissed off at the world, telling her husband, get your effing hands off of me, and she is like belligerent, just hateful. Now, you get a little jaded in our line of work after a while. You're like, oh, no, great, another meth addict or another drunk lady or, another, come on now. Pull yourself together. You're in the ER. Yeah. Well, her husband is telling me, as we're getting her undressed and she doesn't want, leads put on her chest and she doesn't want an IV, he's like, this is not my wife. He's like, we have 2 young kids and we live on a farm, and she is the sweetest, nicest lady I've ever known. He goes, she would never say a cuss word. Wow. He goes, she woke up this morning with a headache, and now she's acting like this. And so, we instantly go down the line of questions, medical history, does she drink alcohol? Does she do drugs? Has she been in a new environment recently? We're going through all these kinds of things. Like if he's saying she's altered, what's really going on here? Honestly, I was super judgmental in my brain. I was very professional to them, but super judgmental in my brain. I'm like, this woman is messed out. She is on crack. He thinks she's the sweetest, nicest thing because when he's gone, she's on drugs. And today she got a bad batch, I'm so in my brain, I'm just ready to work this thing up as drug overdose, we're going to figure this out. But because I have unjaded or people who want to cover their ass, I don't know which one it is, but I have a sense of a medical team that was, working with me. They're like, let's do the full workup. Altered mental status, let's do the full workup. We started with the head CT. Sure enough, she had a brain tumor, like horrible brain tumor.
Oh my.
And she had 0 medical history prior, like none. Had 2 babies, like seriously, no medicines, no medical history. And the tumor had just finally gotten to a size where it was pressing on certain nerves and certain places in her brain. And I'm telling you, it changed me. It changed me because I no longer can just judge somebody when they walk in my room, when they're acting belligerent and ridiculous, and the people are telling me, look, I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. Because they say that to me all the time, and they're lying because they knew what was going on. They're the ones that probably put the meth in her arm before she got there.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how many times it's happened to me where they were like, oh, you don't know what happened. She just started acting crazy. And I'm like,
the weirdest thing.
And then at the end of the story, it seriously, I had been caught up in a few years of emergency nursing and had become very judgmental in my heart more than anything. Like I said, I treated her the same as I would treat anyone, very kind, very matter of fact and professional. But when I found out she had a brain tumor, and here's the other deal, like her parents brought up her 1-year-old and her like 3-year-old, and their life was forever changed at this point. Like, I don't even remember if I got to know exactly what happened after that. But regardless of what happens from here on out, like, she's forever changed. And sure enough, it changed me because I'm like, you cannot judge a book by its cover. You really don't know until you know. You really don't know until the labs come back. You really don't know until the CT scans. You know, you don't.
How old was this woman?
24.
Wow. That's crazy.
24, 25, something like. She was young. I remember thinking, and she was thin, and she was, she had dry skin. So, you know, she kind of fit kind of a messy kind of look, not because she had meth bumps and her missing teeth and things like that, but she just was not your jovial. And she was acting a fool, like she was ridiculous and cursing us out and wouldn't let us touch her and kind of twitchy. And I was like, oh, great, you know. But there wasn't a drug, a drop, nothing in her system. It was the brain tumor. It changed. I'll never forget her. I'll never forget what her face looked like. I'll never forget what her kids look like, because it forever said to me, Elaine, you know, just wait. You know, let's see how this all shakes out. You really don't know what you're getting.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It happens all the time though, doesn't it?
It does. Every day.
Tell me about
it's the one time you think you got this that you don't got this.
Absolutely.
Every time.
Absolutely. You're just when you say, I got this all figured out, and then you're like, oh. Yeah. Never mind.
No. I don't got this.
I got nothing.
I got nothing.
Tell me about your first med error.
I will never forget my first med error. I had been a pediatric ER nurse for 3 months. And
a peds med error.
Yes. And it was terrible. And everybody in the ER was involved. It was very public. Very painful, but I learned a lot. I was fixing to be off of orientation. I was like, they gave me like 16 weeks or something. I don't know, orientation. It was awesome. I had a great preceptor, but I was almost on my own. I was doing most of the stuff by myself. My preceptor was bored of tears. And a little 5-year-old came in with abdominal pain, and we were working her up for appy versus, you know, who knows, constipation. I don't know. I think we were just doing a full abdominal workup on her. And I'd already gotten a great IV, established a great rapport with her mother. We couldn't get her pain under control. No, we hadn't gotten an IV. Let me back up. We had not gotten an IV. Mom was trying to, like, can we just do less invasive first and, you know, try this a different way? Wow. And so we were going to do ultrasound without, you know, any contrast, obviously. So we're going to do ultrasound, and we're going to do intranasal fentanyl, which we did all the time in our PTR. We did use atomizers, and we did intranasal Versed, we did intranasal fentanyl. I mean, it was very common, and I had done it probably 100 times. So I go to the Pyxis, and it's a controlled substance, so I have a witness there, and I pull out the drug. We were talking about something else in the med room, sort of distracted. I pull it up. The ultrasound lady shows up with the wheelchair to take her back. And I said, oh, hold on. I don't want her to be in pain while you do the ultrasound. Let me just go ahead and give this to her intranasally real quick, and then y'all can go. I didn't scan the patient. I didn't scan the med. I just gave it to her up her nose and put her in the wheelchair. As she's leaving to go to ultrasound, I scan the armband that is at the bedside instead of on the patient. I scan the med, and it doesn't match. It gives me red error.
Ruh-roh.
Okay, so I'm like, well, that's weird. So I do it again. I scan the patient, and the armband that's not on the patient, and I scan the med, and it doesn't match. And I look at the vial, and I had just given her Dilaudid intranasally and not fentanyl.
Oh, my.
Yeah. So I was supposed to give her 50 mics of fentanyl intranasally, and I gave her 0.5 of Dilaudid intranasally.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. By the way, there's no studies on this. Pretty sure that intranasal Dilaudid is not a thing.
Yeah. I've never given it that way.
Never done it. Happens to be at that exact moment that the medical director was the doctor for the ER at the moment. So it wasn't even, let's just go all the way to the top and go tell my medical director. I went straight to him and I said, she's in ultrasound. And I was like, I just gave her 0.5 of Dilaudid intranasally. He looked at me and his face turned white and he goes, huh? And I was like, yep. So I had to retrace my steps. I was like, okay, what did I do wrong? The Pyxis was stocked incorrectly. So in the fentanyl Dilaudid was mixed in with the fentanyl. It was the same wrapper, like the same colors, same color top, same size vial. The only difference is the words were Dilaudid and the other one was fentanyl. Like they were identical bottles. And they were stocked incorrectly.
Holy cow.
Yeah. But
wow.
I learned, so here she comes back from ultrasound, which I went to ultrasound and not talking to her about it, just to check on her, make sure she's breathing. Anyways, we get her back in and I start putting her on the heart monitors and I start putting her on the, every monitor that we had. And the mom was like, is everything okay? And I was like, well, I want to tell you what's happened. And so as the medical director and his residents and his med students, because there's everybody there, calls pharmacy down and they're talking in the doc box, I'm explaining to this mother, the medicine that I gave your daughter was pain medicine, but it was the wrong bottle. And I said, we want to watch her heartbeat and I want to watch her breathe. And I'm just going to monitor her for a little bit. And the doc's going to come here in a minute and explain exactly what we need to do next. So like 3 seconds after those words came out of my mouth, 5 people rush into this little room and they're looking at this girl. And the mom just breaks down into tears. And I thought for sure she's going to be mad at me. Like she's going to hate me. And I've, done something terrible to her daughter. And she told the doctor, she goes, I'm so glad that nurse told me what happened before y'all got here. She goes, the last time 5 medical people walked into one of my rooms, they told me that my baby was dead.
Oh, my God.
And I was like, what? So she had lost an infant, and the doctors rush in and tell her later, like, that's what's going on. And so she was more than grateful that I had told her up front what I had done, and that she wasn't, like, super scared when all those medical people came in and started talking to her. Her daughter had amazing pain control for her abdominal pain. She didn't desat at all. She did great. Turns out that Dilaudid given intranasally is half a dose. So it wasn't like giving her a full dose of 0.5 Dilaudid. It was like giving her 0.25, which would have been, maybe overkill for the abdominal pain she was having, but it would work, So pharmacy did all the research, and she spent the night at for OBS. The patient was not harmed. I didn't even get written up over it. It was my first med error. It was a lot to overcome for me as a nurse because I felt terrible. I even though Mom was happy towards the end and nobody was pissed off at me and giving me a hard time, I carried it around for several months, scared to death to double, triple checking, which is good.
Yep.
And scanning, but it changed my practice for sure, because I became a coach and I became a teacher of the new, eventually, of other nurses. And I would tell them my story, and I would say, scan, scan, scan. It's that important. Scan. Double, triple check.
Yeah.
Check your MAR, check your bottle, check your patient. I was like, it's that important. I said, what if I'd given her a whole ml of Dilaudid? What if I'd done this? And I was like, we've been talking a whole different story here. We might have caused her cardiac arrest or more, who knows. So my med error changed my practice, but it changed me. It hurt me. It did. It was painful. And even though I think there's probably worse things that could have happened, I'm so grateful for the scenario that it did happen. If I'm going to make a med error, I'm glad it didn't kill her, or worse, kill me, ruin my career, ruin her. I don't know. That's not worse. Okay, that sounds terrible. Killing somebody would be the worst, but it could have. It didn't ruin me. It changed me and made me a better nurse.
That's awesome. That's okay. Wow. Holy cow.
Go big or go home, Kevin.
That'll scare you.
Sorry, if we're going to make a med error,
go
let's
big
not
or
do
go
that
home.
all.
That's
Okay?
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's not make it a Tylenol med error, because that's for sissies.
Oh, it's terrible.
That's funny. Holy cow.
Mm-hmm.
What's the best advice your mom gave you that then later applied to nursing?
Don't go to nursing school. So my mom...
Hopefully not what she said.
My mom is a nurse. My mom finished nursing school when I was in 5th grade, and she was a cancer nurse for 20 years. She got her bachelor's right the year before we were in nursing school, kind of together. And then she just finished her master's in education of nursing last year. My mom, seriously, she thought, I'm one of 4 children. She thought of all her kids that I would be the one that would not be medical, that would not do nursing. She said that it took 5 nurses to hold me down to get a shot when I was a child. I wouldn't watch blood on television of any kind. I would pass out. When I had my first baby, it was a traumatic ordeal for everyone else, even though I was perfectly fine. She's like, you're a terrible patient.
All drama, no trauma?
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. Those poor nurses. My mom bought all the nursing staff food and candy and apology cards for my ridiculousness as a patient. All that to say is, Mom, I have it on video, Kevin. I will not kid you. I have, I'm talking to her about, I'm a phlebotomist, and I was like, Mom, I really think I should go to nursing school, and I'm really loving what I'm doing. She seriously says, because you like phlebotomy does not mean you would be a good nurse. She goes, I don't think nursing's for you.
Wow.
But it's also the best advice she ever gave me, because I did take some time. I didn't go straight into it. I didn't saw other fields of medicine, and I really made sure that that's really what I wanted before I started school. And my mom is a very encouraging. Now she's the most proud nurse ever. She's like, my daughter's an emergency nurse, and she's going to be a nurse practitioner, and she's the most amazing person ever. And she teaches TNCC sometimes and EMPC, and she's like, she is the most smartest nurse ever. And my mom loves to brag about me now. And so, but yeah.
That's awesome.
That's what she told me. Don't go to nursing school.
That's don't go to nursing. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
It's a trap. It's a trap.
You'll never make it.
What's the best advice a mentor ever gave you?
My favorite mentor that I have was my manager at the Children's Emergency Children's. She told me to get involved with my professional organization. I wasn't actually.
Great advice.
I didn't even know what emergency nurses was. I had been in pediatrics about 2 weeks. Seriously, she hired me, and 2 weeks in, she looked at me and she goes, I'm going to be president this year of our chapter, and you're going to be my secretary. And I was like, so do I answer the phone for you? Like, I seriously had no idea. And they're like, no, you're going to love it. You're going to do great. I'll tell you what to do. I'll guide you through it. And she's like, this is going to make you into the nurse you're going to be. And she goes, you have to be a part of this. And so I was voluntold into ENA. And awesome. It changed me again, like all these steps that led to me where I am today. Like I think I got the edge up, like because I was in these meetings and because I was going to hear these speakers and because I was a part of something. I went from OR nurse knowing only about how to put in a Foley and prep a site to like full on emergency. Here's how we're doing life. Like, and I'm in a preceptorship at work, and I'm going. I think it gave me the leg up, the edge up. The best advice she gave me was get involved with this professional organization. You will grow. And did I grow? I look back and I'm thinking, I precept nurses now who have no idea that ENA does this much, and I try to encourage them and show them. And I'm thinking, man, if you would go to the conference, or if you would listen to these speakers, or if you would read the magazine or the journal, or if you could hear other nurses talk about their experiences, this would make a lot more sense to you, and you would catch on to this a lot faster. And I feel like the best thing my mentor, and she's still in my life today, the best thing she ever did for me was tell me, get involved with my professional organization. 100%.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, that advice worked out pretty well for me too. So
it's amazing.
What's the worst advice anyone ever gave you for nursing?
I'm trying to think. I've had a lot of bad advice. I don't know. Never trust a patient. I hear that over and over again. And it's a double-edged sword, but I think it's bad advice.
Yeah.
I think it's bad advice. You have to be able to give yourself that every patient deserves a chance, right? Until they don't. But every patient deserves a chance to tell you the truth. If they tell you this is the only place they can get my IV, they usually stick me 8 times. Why am I going to not go there? Unless there's like a pseudoaneurysm or something. I can trust that patient. If they've been poked 8 times every time they come to the ER, and there's a good vein there and there's a way to get it, I'm not going to prove that I'm super nurse and go somewhere else just to prove them wrong. You know, like
just out of spite.
I know, right? And sometimes I'll say, I don't really feel a vein there. I don't really, maybe you're dehydrated this time. Do you mind if I look somewhere else? There's been times where I haven't done exactly what the patient asked, but in general, they know themselves, they know their bodies, they know what they've been through. When someone says never trust a patient, when I've heard that before, it's usually in regards to them lying about stuff. But why are they lying? What's the underlying purpose? What are they trying to get to? So, honestly, I probably trust people more than I don't trust people. Even after 6 years in the emergency room, I'm still shocked when people lie to me.
like, what? What do you mean?
I mean, not always, but there is plenty of times where I'm like, I can't believe that they did not tell me the truth. Of course. That's why they're here.
Like, wait.
What?
Wait, this drug screen is positive.
There is a foreign object up your ass. I see it. Why did you tell me you didn't put anything up there? You know?
You said you slipped, sir. I don't know what's going on.
And I believed you. But in general, I think trusting our patients to kind of guide us and help us, you know, and then if they know that I trust generally what they're saying, then they'll trust me more too. And so I genuinely try to listen and hear what they're saying. And then I'll be like, when we're being around the bush, like why we're here, my mom had cancer and this and that, I'm like, okay, what's your biggest fear? Like, what brought you tonight that you said, this has to be seen right now. This is super important. What's your biggest fear about what's going on? And then if you can get to that point and trust what they're saying, I don't know. I just feel like you get a lot further with where you need to go and how you need to get there.
I think that is true. I think I think sometimes, and some people get more jaded than others, but I think we end up with an inherent distrust that, you know, it's becomes one of those trust but verify.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I'll listen to you. It's like, saying, yes, yes, yes. I know you're a virgin and you've never had sex, but I'm going to do a pregnancy test anyway.
Yes.
How many times did you do that as a peds nurse where you're like, I'm sure little Susie is no way she's pregnant because she's only 15.
Right.
But we're going to go ahead and do it. We're going to get a little bit of urine anyway.
Yep. Sorry, it's for, I said we just have to check because so many people have not told the truth before.
Sometimes people don't know. And you're like, oh, look, guess who's pregnant? What advice would you give a brand new emergency nurse?
Take it all in. Don't try to be a know-it-all. Don't try to, figure it all out on the first day. Just take it all in, step by step, moment by moment, patient by patient. Don't try to get it all. They say it's like drinking water from a fire hose. Hooking it up and full blast. You're getting it all all at one
full
time.
Blast.
But honestly, sometimes it's like that. But you really got to break it down and decide, not to get overwhelmed, and that you're not going to learn it all in one day. I say most of the time I tell them, give yourself 6 months. Like maybe not an orientation, maybe not with a preceptor, but give yourself 6 months to really get in the groove of being an emergency nurse. Don't feel like you're going to have it. You're just not going to have it all. You won't have a heart attack patient when you want one, when you're trying to learn. You'll have a heart attack patient whenever you're not ready. You're not going to have the stroke 5 times before you do it on your own. You might not have one before you do it on your own. Grab somebody who's done it before and just jump in. But just realize that moment by moment, day by day, be proactive. Seek education, but just don't realize you're just not going to get it all first at 1 minute. It's not something that you just learn immediately.
Yeah, it's certainly not on our timeline, is it?
No. Well, especially emergency nurses, we are geared to go, and we want to know it and just go ahead and do it. And you're not taught that in nursing school. You're taught how to be a good med-surg nurse in nursing school. You're taught how to be on a schedule and on a timetable and on a, rotation of it's time to bathe, now it's time to eat, now it's time for meds. And emergency nurses are not taught emergency nursing in nursing school. It's just not. And so the transition goes from time management to prioritization. What's the highest priority? Let's start there. And you just got to constantly triage in your brain, even though you don't even know what triage means.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So everybody has a go-to story. So you're at a cocktail party, you're hanging out at a party, and someone says, "Oh, Elaine, you're an emergency nurse? That's cool. Tell me a funny story. Tell me a cool story." What's your go-to story? Because the question they always ask that they really don't want to know is, what's the worst thing you've ever seen? Nobody. I don't think people realize what a tough question that is.
It is terrible
because it's one of those where you're like, what's the worst thing you've seen? Oh, you're not ready. Like let's not kill the mood here,
right?
By me telling you the worst thing I've seen, because I've seen some shit.
Yes, my favorite story. That I laugh so hard still to this day, years and years later, is I'm in triage, or I can't remember. I was either helping out in triage or I was a triage nurse. I can't remember exactly what happened. I know there was another nurse with me, and we're at pediatrics, and this mother is frantic, almost in tears, like basically bringing in this child and her arms shaking, and it's all bundled up, and she's like, I need a nurse, and I'm, I got to play it cool. So when people get all frantic, I get chill, right? Because I'm just going to bring it down.
Yeah,
we're not going to freak out. We're not going to freak out until I know there's a reason to freak out. But inside of me, the deep side of me, is like, oh shit, something's going down,
Yeah.
So
this shit's getting real.
It is. So, and how many times do they not call an ambulance and they bring a dead baby in the door? It happens. But that's not the case here. I could see the baby. And so she's frantic. She's crying. We bypass admissions or anything. She comes straight into triage, and I start unbundling this child. And he's in like 6 blankets and a parka. And, and it's Texas summer. I don't know what it is. But,
my baby's got a fever. It won't go down. It's weird.
Yes, exactly. And so she's crying, and she can barely get her story out. She's like, I'm afraid my baby's going to die. And I said, okay, what's going on? And she's just like, well, I don't have a thermometer at home, but I know he's got a fever. And she goes, and it's a really bad one. And I was like, okay. She goes, well, so I turned on my oven, and I touched the stove, and it was like 200 degrees. And then I touched the baby, and he's at least 200 degrees.
Oh, God.
And I couldn't even process it as fast as she said it. I'm unbundling this baby, and the baby is like cute and pink and laughing and cooing at me. And I'm like watching it breathe, and I'm processing all this at the same time. And I looked at her and I said, now tell me that one more time. She goes, well, I don't have a thermometer. Yeah, I don't have a thermometer. So I turned on my oven. I touched the outside of the oven, and then I touched the baby, and they feel the same. My baby's at least 200 degrees. I had to walk away. I left the other nurse with the baby. I said, I'll be right. Let me talk to the doctor. I'll be right back. And I had to go laugh out loud somewhere because I couldn't even fathom in my brain how anyone could be 200 degrees.
Yeah, you're like,
she was serious.
I'm no doctor, but he's not 200 degrees.
200 degrees. My baby is 200 degrees. And and I can't even, in my wildest thought processes, would I ever even think, maybe I should touch the outside of an oven to figure out how much my temperature of my child is. Anyways.
Let's see if this feels the same. This has to be close.
It's super close. I know normal body temperature is 98, 99, 100, but this baby's at least 200 degrees.
200 degrees. Ma'am, you have a hot baby. Holy cow.
She's no wonder she thought her baby was going to die. Come on, 200 degrees? So yeah. Didn't burst into flame.
Yeah, right? You're like, geez, he is well done. Well done.
Well done. And I don't even think that baby had a rectal temp. We did a rectal temp on him, and I don't even think that he had a fever at all.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's like, Doc, can we just come up here and discharge from triage?
Let me give him some Tylenol to go.
Can we get some Tylenol and just send her on home and just call it?
Unfortunately, this required a lot of patient education before they could leave.
That's funny. Holy cow.
Without a doubt. Yeah,
man,
for sure.
we have so much education to do here before you go. It's going to be a while.
It's going to be a minute. And there's going to be a test before you take this child home.
That's right. For the safety of all involved, we need to make sure you don't do this again.
He's touching an oven.
Yeah, right.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, God.
And we wonder why, something about natural selection, it just skips a generation, or I don't know what happened here, but oh my gosh.
We fight natural selection every day. We fight it. That's funny. What do you do at the end of a stressful shift? How do you go home and not carry all that crap with you?
What do you do? Mm-hmm. I call my sister or I call my husband, and I said, I need some time just to vent. You don't need to add anything to this. I just want to talk. And they're not medical, and they're not emotionally involved in any of it. And I just get to vent. I don't usually give HIPAA details. It's not like Johnny Sue did this and that, but this is what happened at work. And I'm emotional about it. And I'm probably going to cry in a minute when I process some of this. But I'm a verbal processor. And if I can verbally get it out and kind of pull it out of my system, because I can't process it at work.
Yeah,
usually
you don't have time.
There's too much going on, But, it can't process it. But as I'm driving home, I've got a 20-minute drive. I want to call somebody and I want to talk about it. And then if it comes up later, I want to talk about it some more. So I give myself that leeway that if I'm not done talking about it, then that's okay. I need to process this a little deeper. And then on another side say that that's not appropriate or not going to work or that no one's available to talk, I will. I'll just have a good cry on the way home. I'll be like, you know what? I need an emotional release of some kind because this was emotional. And I won't cry at work. I won't do it. Just not going to. But sometimes I need to.
Have you ever?
I have. I have cried at work once in front of a patient.
In front of the patient?
Yeah. They touched me, Kevin. They touched me.
Tell me about that.
You do not touch me. If we're both trying not to cry, then we don't hug or touch. That's the way this works.
Oh, I'm a sympathetic crier. If you cry, I'll cry.
Gosh, I don't want to cry. But
what happened? Tell me that story.
Oh my gosh, it was horrible. 3-year-old.
If you're okay telling that story, you don't. I certainly don't have.
I tell this story to almost anybody who will listen because we're real people. You know, we're 100% human. And I'm a mom, and I'm a wife. Is another pediatric story. It's my best ones, I think, or the ones that changed me. It was early on. But the mom brings in the 3-year-old, and she's throwing tantrums. She's crying all the time. We don't give her what she wants. We've tried spanking. She keeps holding her head and saying her head hurts, but I've taken her to the doctor for a month now, and they say nothing's wrong with her, that she's just being a brat. And sometimes when she gets her way, she'll finally sleep. And sometimes when we give her way again, look her over. And she is consolable to a certain point with certain things. And we're like, well, maybe she is just kind of a brat. I don't know. And so we have a doctor there who likes to look for zebras. That's his favorite thing. And he's like, you know, she's seen 3 different doctors, but nobody's done any blood work. Let's do some blood work. And so then we go through the tantrums and the fit to do an IV, which takes 3 sticks. And I'm in there for over an hour with other people trying to be a calf urine. And we're doing the thing. You know, we're holding her down and got child life. And it is an ordeal. We're screaming and spit throwing and parents are crying. And it's terrible. So I'm in there for over an hour doing that to start. And then the blood work comes back yucky. Like, something's not right here. So then we got to do further workup. And now we're going to do a CT scan. And so now we're doing CT scan, head, neck, and abdomen. And that comes back questionable, not good. Can't really tell. Something's fuzzy right here in the brain. Something's not right. So then we got to sedate and do an MRI. And so I'm the sedation nurse, and we call in because I work nights, of course, and we're doing the MRI team. And so I'm in and out of there. She's in our ER a total of 8 hours. So I'm spending bukus of time in and out of that room.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those rare patients that I'm always trying to create rapport. I'm like, well, where did you grow up? And who do you know? And maybe I know those people. And I just try to make quick rapport anytime in a room. Well, over 8 hours, you start making more than rapport. You're like, oh, hey, look, she's doing well. And how's little sister? And, then I'm in the sedation with mom because mom is going to be in there with me in the MRI. And the MRI takes an hour. So mom's gowned and gloved and mom's in lead and I'm in lead and we're in the MRI and the patient's sedated and I'm watching vitals and me and mom just start talking and we are discussing like what they do and what she does for fun and who this little kid is and how 2 months ago she was such a different kid and just we're bonding. This sweet moment, enjoying. And I tell her my stories of when my kids were 3 and how I couldn't, there were some days where I felt like I just couldn't get a leg up or a break because they would cry and I would throw a fit and I didn't know who was having a meltdown first, me or them. And so we're bonding over this mama thing. And sedation's over. We go back to the room. An hour later, we get a final read from a radiologist. So I've had her all night. She's got a basal stem tumor. It's at the base of her brain, and it is
damn it,
causing problems. And it's terrible. So the doc says, Elaine, come here. He tells me first, and he's like, I need you to go in there with me. He goes, you've already made good friends with these people. I can tell that they like you. You've already, the child seems comfortable with you. I need you to go in there with me and help me break the news to this parents.
Oh, Elaine. Oh, God.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And it took my breath away just hearing it from the doc.
I bet.
And I said, yeah, I'll do it. I'll go in there with you. And we went in there, and he gave the prognosis. He gave the statistics. He pulled up like the up to date and read about what it causes and who she would need to see and what the chances of survival are, which are so bad. Like everything was negative and pretty terrible. And the mother is crying. The father is crying. The baby's been throwing a fit. She's off and on, but we had sedated her, so she was sleeping at this point. And the mother comes over and she grabs me. She gives me this giant hug and she's squeezing me. And she doesn't let go and she's crying. I mean, I honestly had zero. I mean, I was already choked up a little bit whenever the doctor told me in the doc box. I was there for support. I wasn't there to cry. I was there to be there for the doctor and for the parents. She grabs me and she gives me this huge hug and she's bawling and I'm bawling. All of a sudden, I'm a mess with her. We are both messes. We are both crying. I don't know who's consoling who at this point. I mean, I was a mess. And honestly, I didn't get over it that day. I didn't get over it the next day. It took me a little time to kind of, and it shook me with my religion and how I felt about God at that point. It shook me from, like, how close I actually wanted to get to patients. Like, I'm like, maybe I got a little too close. Maybe I spent a little too much time with that mom. Maybe that was, it went over my comfort zone in how I wanted to feel at work. And, but you know what? I wouldn't change it for a thing. I would not have changed that for a thing. I go back into my brain and I was like, I did that exactly the way I wanted to. I was a human person. I was a mother. I was a nurse. I was professional. I did exactly and I would do it again exactly the same way. I wouldn't change it. And I still love God. So we're okay.
And we're still good. So
still okay. Because I think things are allowed to shake you and make you human. And you can be okay on the other side of it. It's okay. But as a practice, I'm a professional. I'm a nurse. I am here to make sure that it is not about me. It is about that patient. And it is about those family members. CPR and call a death, I'll cry later if I need to. Trauma comes in and I can still hear the wailing of people in my head sometimes because I'll never forget certain situations. But crying and being that kind of human with that kind of emotion, it distracts from the actual issues and the actual things that are going on. If I can help it at all, I want to be their strong person. I want to be there for them. I don't want them having to console me,
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's terrible and crazy.
Yeah. Holy cow. It's a good story. Those are the patients that we never forget. Yeah. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
So,
oh, yeah.
The last question I have for you is a question that I call 3 things. And it's 3 things that you're going to tell me 3 things that a new ER nurse should remember and 3 things that they can just forget.
You got to remember why you do what you do. Got to. You got to remember it's a real person who's probably never been in a medical situation, and you're smarter in this arena. So just know that, you got to remember that that's a patient. That's someone on the other side of that who's scared to death and maybe their first time in the ER. And anyways, not a comfortable environment. You just put yourself in that situation. I guess the bullet point would be do unto others as you want it done unto you. If you weren't medical.
Yeah. Golden rule.
Yeah, for sure. Those are 2 things I carry with me every day before I start my shift. I'm going to treat people the way I want them to treat me or my mom. And I'm going to remember, why I do what I do. It's important. 3rd thing is not take anything super, super to heart. I mean, do your best, but you can't carry it around. You can't keep it with you forever. Something bad happens, you got to have a way to, let it go some way, somehow, have an outlet. But you can't carry things around with you. It'll ruin you. It'll just destroy you. Got to find a way to let it go, one way or another. So don't carry it around.
Yeah.
Things not to remember, things not to keep with you. That was the other part.
Yep.
Laundry list of things you did wrong. Let it go. Like I was saying earlier. Don't keep, no, that's a harder one. I wouldn't keep what coworkers say in a bad moment as who they are as a person, because we all get to the point where we're stressed. And I've been in many situations where people who I'm friends with now, I didn't like initially because I didn't know that in that moment they were stressed and they were having a hard day. Does that make sense? So I would give, don't hang on to what people say to you in a stressful situation, because it's probably not who they are, what they really are. Give people grace. I wouldn't keep picking up overtime shifts. You will go crazy if you pick up too much overtime.
Burnout's a real thing.
For real.
For real. That's true story right there.
No kidding.
So, I can't thank you enough for spending some time with me and talking to me and telling me your stories. I really appreciate that.
Of course.
This has been a blast. This has been a lot of fun.
It's going to be helpful, Kevin. It's going to be good. I like what you're doing. I like your questions. Wasn't hard to answer.
Again, Elaine, I can't thank you enough for being here. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me. I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Facebook.
Why is this desk such a mess? Can't do anything on this desk. Wait. What is that? Honey? I think your thing is still on. Babe? Honey, I think your thing is still recording. Honey, can you come fix your thing on the computer real quick?